I've lived in Michigan for most of my life, and I have to say, it's a pretty great state. You've got lush greenery, some great cities, amazing food, but let's be honest, every city has its downfalls. So today, I'm gonna share with you the 4 main reasons that you wouldn't want to live in the Ann Arbor area. I'm Lauren and a local realtor, and I know just how tough it can be to decide to move to an area if you haven't been here before, especially if you haven't experienced winter here. I've heard it time and time again from clients that are moving from out of state, and I'm hoping this video will help ease your concerns and give you a bit more information on some of the biggest cons of living in Michigan from a Michigander. We're in the Midwest, which means that we get snow, a lot of snow. And not only do we get a lot of snow, but Michigan is known to get snow anywhere between October and March. Now, that doesn't mean that we have snow on the ground that whole time, but Michigan, and especially in the Ann Arbor area, loves to keep you guessing, which means that in October, we might get snow one day and then have it be 70 degrees and sunny the next day. Now, one of the hardest parts about this is planning for your next day's commute and drive time to work. Any amount of snow or ice is going to add on time to your commute, and I always recommend leaning on Google Maps to help give alternate routes, as accidents on major highways are pretty common when snow's on the ground. Another thing to consider is how to dress. My advice is to wear layers at almost any time of year. That way you're covered when it comes to a chilly night or a sudden unexpected hot day in November. If you haven't lived in an area that snows before, you'll be getting first-hand experience with shoveling, or you'll want to invest in a snowblower or service to clean your driveway and sidewalk for you. Yes, you are responsible for the sidewalk outside of your house. This always seems to surprise people. Besides the snow, one of the things that is different for people that haven't been to the Ann Arbor area is figuring out the best way to get around. We don't have great public transportation other than down on the University of Michigan's campus, so you'll mostly be driving, walking, or biking your way around the city. While there is ample parking, you'll be paying for a parking spot 6 out of 7 days a week. Sundays are free, thankfully. If you do decide to try your hand at street parking, being a good parallel parker is an absolute must. Now, I know this isn't everyone's cup of tea, especially downtown when it's busy, which is why I highly recommend the parking structures. Unless you can find a coveted side street parking spot, you'll be using a structure or parking at a meter on the street. I recommend picking out your parking structure ahead of time when you venture downtown, just so you save time not having to circle blocks to find a spot. This can get a little tricky too, as Ann Arbor is known to have lots of one-way streets, especially in the Carytown neighborhood. One thing that thankfully is getting a little bit better recently, but is still a con, is the condition of the roads. Michigan is known to have horrible potholes because of all the salt that is used on the roads in the winter. Our governor even campaigned on the idea of fixing the roads. That's how bad they were. Ann Arbor has been tackling the roads pretty aggressively lately, though, and adding in bike lanes as well to help commuters that decide not to drive downtown and take their bike instead. Now, these lanes are great, but I will say they take a little bit of getting used to as a driver if you haven't had to deal with them before. Because U of M is intermixed with downtown Ann Arbor, you're going to encounter lots of students, and those students are usually on bikes or walking around campus. Students cross the street like they own the place, so it's important to stay alert too. I have to say, I'm guilty of having done this when I was a student too, so I can't be too upset, but it's definitely something now that's a bit frustrating as a driver around the city. These college kids are not your average students either. They have great taste in food, they hear about new and upcoming restaurants first, and they're savvy at grabbing tables at the best restaurants in town, other than the nicest steakhouses. So I don't know about you, but I lived on microwave meals and sandwiches as a college kid, but it seems like students these days have more refined taste. Now, what does that mean for you? You might encounter wait lists for restaurants if you don't plan ahead. I recommend using OpenTable as a great app to use to get a reservation ahead of time so you don't even have to compete with students. I wouldn't be doing my job as a realtor if I didn't also comment on housing in Ann Arbor as a possible con that you're going to run into. It's such a desirable place to live and work, so the property values have jumped significantly. Right now, the average price of a home in Ann Arbor is hovering around $350,000 to $400,000, which makes it pretty tough for a first-time buyer to consider living within the city. Now, there are some great surrounding cities that I can absolutely recommend, and we'll cover that in another video, but expect to make a substantial investment if you do want to live in Ann Arbor. This also goes for renting, which can be tough because of high demand between students and those visiting that come for their residency for the hospital system or come to teach at the university. Just like home prices, rents raised up to $1,700 or more a month, and honestly, they're getting upwards of $2,400, and oftentimes would be more than a mortgage would even be. One surprising bonus for my cross-country movers from California or those coming from New York or the East Coast, you'll likely be pleasantly surprised at what you get for your money in Michigan. You'll get more square footage and often a lot bigger yard than you would have been able to find in other states. Just like every city, there's always going to be some cons to where you live. I hope this video helped shed a little bit of light on what you might expect from living in Michigan, and if you can get past the snow, parking, students, and maybe the expense, I think you'll find that Ann Arbor is a hidden gem and absolutely worth it. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe for more content just like this, and if you're thinking of making a move to Michigan, I'd love to help guide you and be your real estate resource of choice. Whether you're thinking Ann Arbor or a surrounding city in Southeast Michigan, you can find my contact info in the description below.